All right, let's dive right into this explainer, because today we're doing something I find absolutely fascinating. We're looking straight at the underlying code, the hidden stats, if you will, of your most powerful piece of hardware, your brain. You know, if you've ever felt like your thoughts just have a mind of their own, well, you're about to see the exact programming that actually drives them.
I mean, think about it for a second. Have you ever considered that your daily thoughts aren't just these abstract, cloudy feelings? Picture them instead as like different character loadouts or background apps running on incredibly complex mental hardware. Every single time you feel happy or angry, or even when you just completely space out staring at a wall, your mind is equipping a very specific set of stats to make that exact experience happen.
So let's kick things off with level 1, treating the mind like a super processor.
To really look under the hood of human consciousness, we have to talk about Sangaha, which translates to synthesis. You can think of Sangaha as basically the ultimate gamer wiki or stat breakdown for your brain. It's this incredibly precise method of taking every single type of consciousness and classifying exactly which mental factors, the ingredients, the lines of code, are associated with them. It literally shows us the exact loadout equipped in every possible state of mind.
Which brings us to our mental base stats. Before we can get into the really high-level stuff, we've got to look at the fundamental building blocks, those base stats making up our daily psychological loadouts. And there are 4 core categories here. First up, the universals. There are exactly 7 of these, and they are your absolute default settings. They run on all 89 to 121 possible types of human consciousness. You literally cannot form a thought without these 7 running in the background, period. Then you've got 6 occasionals. These are kind of like browser plugins. They only activate when suitable. Next are the modifiers. You have 14 unwholesome mental factors. These are your toxic debuffs, and they only associate with the 12 specific unwholesome mental states. And finally, the big ones, the 25 beautiful factors. These are your ultimate buffs, associating with up to 59 different wholesome consciousness types.
Now, what's really wild is how strict the rules of your mental coding actually are. Your 25 beautiful factors, massive performance boost, for sure, but they are strictly locked to wholesome states. Meanwhile, your 14 unwholesome factors create this highly toxic loadout. And the crucial point to remember here is that they are mutually exclusive. The source text makes it crystal clear. Those 25 beautiful mental factors absolutely do not occur in unwholesome consciousness. You simply cannot equip your beautiful buffs if your operating system is being dragged down by unwholesome debuffs. It's one or the other.
Okay, let's level up to the pro tier, the super mundane and Mahagata states.
We're entering the God tier of consciousness here, the supramundane or lokutara, where the mind is just profoundly, intensely focused, like in deep meditation. And you'd probably think that getting to a higher state of mind means adding more features, right? Actually, no. To reach the highest states, your mind actively deletes unnecessary code to hit maximum efficiency. It's amazing. In these supramundane states, your 14 unwholesome factors, completely blocked. In the first jhana, your mind starts off high with 36 equipped factors. But to hit the second jhana, it drops down to 35. It literally sheds the code for initial application, which is the act of aiming your mind. To reach the third jhana, it drops to 34 by deleting sustained application, the act of holding it there. And by the 4th and 5th jhana, it drops to 33, shedding joy or piti in favor of pure hyper-efficient equanimity. Your mind literally gets more powerful by doing less.
And it gets even more streamlined than that. If we look at the Mahagata Masterclass Consciousness, you strip away even more bloatware. The first jhana here starts at 35 mental factors. But by the time you hit the 5th jhana, you've dropped initial application, sustained application, joy, and 2 eliminable factors. You end up running on a hyper-efficient, laser-focused 30 factors for just absolute peak performance.
But let's bring it back to daily gameplay, the beautiful and the unwholesome.
We're talking about the sense sphere, or kamavachara, which is where most of our normal daily thoughts and reactions live. So what does our stat sheet look like when we're just going about our regular day? 38. That is the massive, absolute maximum number of stats your mind can equip at any single time. But how do you actually hit that ultimate loadout? You hit 38 factors during a wholesome consciousness that's associated with pleasant feeling, is packed with wisdom, and is completely unprompted, meaning it happens naturally, spontaneously, zero hesitation. That is your brain firing on all positive cylinders.
Now, let's flip it and look at what I like to call the glitchy gameplay. These toxic states carry a base of 14 unwholesome factors, like the quadruple of delusion, but the total number fluctuates wildly. For instance, if you experience prompted aversion,
which means anger coupled with displeasure, the quadruple of hatred, and that sluggish sloth-torpor duel. You max out the negative side at 22 factors. Prompted greed, when paired with wrong view and sloth-torpor, runs on 21 factors. But if your system glitches out into pure doubt or restlessness with neutral feeling, it drops to a minimum of just 15 factors. It's essentially your mental processor getting hung up on an error screen.
And honestly, this brings up a fascinating, hard-coded rule in your mind's software. The source data points out this literal programming constraint. Greed, or lobha, and anger, dosa, are mutually exclusive. It is completely impossible for your mind to run greed and anger in the exact same processor tick. The code simply won't compile.
All right, let's shift over to background scripts, the rootless consciousness.
We're talking about the absolute lowest level operating processes here. These are the automatic, low-energy NPC background scripts of your mind that just happen completely behind the scenes. 7. That is the absolute minimum, bare-bones stat requirement for a moment of consciousness to even exist. Remember those 7 universals we mentioned earlier? Well, in certain baseline states, that is literally the only thing running.
Let's break these rootless traits down a bit. This is your brain in extreme low-energy mode. The processing power here is super weak. And because it's so basic, it uses only ethically variable factors, so no beautiful buffs, no unwholesome debuffs. And notably, out of those 6 occasionals, there is absolutely zero desire or chanda equipped here. So when you're just seeing a color or hearing a basic sound or smelling something without actively thinking about it, which is called duet vijnana, that's a rootless process running on the absolute bare minimum hardware load of just those 7 universals.
But, even background scripts can get slight RAM upgrades depending on the task. When your mind switches to investigating a new stimulus, or adverting, which is turning your attention to your sense doors, your loadout bumps up slightly to 10 or 11 factors. It adds things like initial application and decision. And incredibly, there's a highly specific rootless script used for the smile of an enlightened arahant. That smile runs on exactly 12 factors, maxing out the background script loadout by adding energy and joy.
So, how do we master our mental loadout? We've covered a ton of ground today, looking at the exact numbers that build out our psychological reality. Let's bring all these amazing numerical mechanics together into a real practical takeaway. The big lesson of this explainer is that the synthesis of Sangaha Naya proves your mind is not just some random chaotic mess. It is a highly structured, predictable, and programmable system. By understanding that every state of mind relies on specific mental factors, you can actually start identifying exactly which apps are currently driving your behavior. You start to realize that anger and greed are just bloated software you can refuse to equip, and that reaching a higher state of focus actually means stripping away the excess code.
Which leaves us with this final thought. You know the mechanics now. You know that 38 factors of wholesome wisdom is your absolute maximum potential, and you've seen how those glitchy, unwholesome traits drag your processor down. So, if you can see the exact code running your mind, what loadout are you going to choose to equip today? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this changes exactly how you look at the software running inside your own head.